First, I'm going to start by thanking the organizers to think of me for this presentation. And also I'll start with a disclaimer on the fact that I'm not an expert of X-ray emission. Sometimes my slides are a bit loaded with information for two reasons. One, because I'm not an expert and I wanted to keep track of the information I'm going to give. And second, I thought that it could be useful for some people in PCMI also to have these informations. Okay, so the outline of my talk is the following. I'm going to start straight in because I have a crowded program in this talk. I'll start with a brief reminder on Athena, although Didier already said everything this morning. So there are two instruments, the wide field imager, which is an imager with a somehow poor energy resolution, but a large field of view and a nice angular resolution, I would say. And there is the XIFU, which is a spectrometer with a strong, good energy resolution, a smaller field of view, and also a satisfying angular resolution. So I heard that I should update these numbers to 8 arcseconds. So for reference reasons, I wanted to compare these capabilities with former instruments like XMM Newton. So I prepared these few slides that don't have a huge interest, so I'm going to skip them. They don't have a huge direct interest for the talk. So I compared with XMM Newton, with Chandra instruments, and also with X-Prism instruments. Okay, and the nicest plot, the most summarizing plot I can show is this one, which showed on the left the reconstructed bulk motion induced velocity field in the hot intracluster gas for an XIFU observation of the Perseus-like cluster. So it shows, it demonstrates a nice velocity resolution, which is an energy resolution at the end of the day. And on the right-hand side, there is this very, very nice spectrum that illustrates the capabilities of Athena well above the ones of XMM Newton and the recently disappeared ITOMI, well, never commissioned ITOMI telescope. Okay, and now I'm going to show very broadly, to summarize, to spell out very broadly the questions we're interested in the PCMI community, the questions that are relevant for everyone who studies the galactic and extragalactic interstellar medium. Okay, so everyone is more or less familiar with this kind of plot that shows the cycle of matter in a Milky Way-like galaxy. So you can start everywhere you want. So we can start at the formation of molecular clouds, owing to the gravitational instability parts or totality of these clouds collapse to form dense cores that will create stars. These stars then will evolve. They will have stellar winds. They will have sometimes explosive death, like supernova explosions. And all these processes, from the formation to the death of stars, is going to feed back on the ISM, feedback in the form of photons, of shocks, of cosmic rays that can cause the disruption of molecular clouds, their progressive transformation, conversion in warm neutral and ionized gas, and eventually to the formation of cold H1 clouds that will also eventually convert to molecular clouds. Okay, so this is the basic matter cycle in the galaxy. I want to make a small focus on what happens during the life of stars. Like I said, molecular clouds can collapse in one block, or sometimes molecular clouds can collide and create filaments. And whether you have a monolithic collapse or a filament formation, you have apparition of dense cores that are going to give birth to stars, protostars and stars, either in an isolated way, like is the case here in HH212, which is relatively isolated, or in more clustered way, like in this W43MM1 filament that produces a lot of close protostars with outflows that are sometimes overlapping, as you can see here. Okay, so all these protostars, like I just said, are associated to ejection of material causing jets and protostellar outflows. Then they evolve, they move on to the main sequence and evolve. The most massive stars emit very strong stellar winds. Some of them explode in supernova explosions. And then the supernova, the evolved supernova remnant stage that lasts for a few tens of thousands of years is the one where the supernova remnant are going to inject photons, cosmic rays, and shocks over large scales of the interstellar medium. Okay, so we study all these phases, all these objects, because we want to understand the role of the ISM in the evolution of galaxies. And to do so, we must characterize the phases that we see. We must understand this cycle of matter and all its evolutions. And eventually, we want to understand how a galaxy transforms its baryons into stars. And to do that, ideally, we aim at building a predictive scenario to be able to characterize the initial mass function and to understand the star formation efficiency. And all these two questions, they are linked by feedbacks, and they are asked for each cosmic age. As you can see on this very nice figure, we have estimates of the star formation rate variation with the redshift of the considered galaxies. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about today is the input from Athena-like telescopes on this kind of subjects and science. Okay, and the good news is that Athena has something to say, has something to bring us to a lot of stages in this cycle and to a lot of objects in this feedback of the stars, the young, the living, and the dying stars onto the interstellar medium. Okay, so I will start with the pure PCMI perspective, which is really a pure PCMI topic. And the only one that I could find in the supporting papers of Athena was mostly about dust grains. Well, sorry, mostly about the hot interstellar medium and the cold interstellar medium. Okay, so let's start with the hot interstellar medium. The supporting paper, the Athena supporting paper, is called SNERST, so supernova remnants and the hot interstellar medium. This hot ISM is the one that is kept hot either by young stellar objects, so jets and molecular outflows, or supernova explosions. Okay, the temperature is 10 to the 6, 10 to the 7 K. Okay, so the first thing that Athena can bring us is to characterize the charge exchange at a very high energy, the X-ray emissions charge exchange due to charge exchange, which will allow us to probe this hot ISM interaction with the neutral gas in the places where usually supernova remnant shocks interact with the external world. So these signatures are seen exclusively in lines. So you can see an example of lines here. And they are expected in relatively young supernova remnants, less than 10,000 years. They have been seen in one star forming region, which is Carina, and they are expected in high velocity halo clouds as well. Also, they are seen in starburst galaxies and galactic winds. So Athena will allow to probe the way the fast shocks from these objects interact with the interstellar medium, thanks to the X-ray charge exchange that is generated, emission that is generated through these interactions. The second thing that Athena can do for us is to map the general hot ISM phase seen in absorption, given its sensitivity and collecting area. Athena will allow us to probe almost 2,000 X-ray sources in and around the galactic disks. And in these sources, obtaining this kind of spectra will allow us to reveal the temperature distribution and to probe the different ionization processes, whether this ionization is caused by collisional excitation in shocks or by photoionization by X-ray sources. Okay, the strong point here for Athena is the spatially resolved emission spectroscopy with XIFU that will allow to characterize the gas impacted by these middle-age, let's say, supernova remnants that manifest themselves around 1 keV. The spectrometry will also allow to characterize the dust sputtering in these very fast shocks that destroy the dust grains and characterize the morphology and conditions of the local hot ISM. Also, the the metal abundances evolution in function of the cosmic time will be probed thanks to the observations of SNR in nearby galaxies, so the Magellanic Clouds M31 and M32. Okay. Another thing, another medium that Athena will allow us to probe is the cold interstellar medium. We have heard some talks already about these characteristic edges that manifest themselves when X-ray photons interact, well, from background sources interact with dust particles. Okay, so as you can see here with this simulated XIFU spectra, you can see that these observations should allow us to put strong constraints on the composition of the grains. Not only the oxygen and iron edges, but also the magnesium, iron, and silicium edges that characterize the dense medium that is otherwise difficult to observe because of the extinction. Okay. In the case of the iron splitting, say, this kind of observation should allow us to probe the existence of iron inclusions in the disk grains, for instance. Okay, last element of the cold interstellar medium that Athena is going to help us to probe is the scattering of X-ray photons from background sources by dust and dusty molecular clouds. So the first category of scattering events is the presence of halo, of diffuse emission. This halo can be imaged. You see one example here. From an X-ray binary. So you see the halo that is distributed isotropically around the X-ray binary, and this transferred streak that is caused by the interaction with the CCD instrument that we use to image it. And you can actually characterize with the halo, we can characterize the small grains, their distribution, their geometry, and their properties of the dust grains that cause these halos around the X-ray objects. And you can also characterize the central source. Okay, and Athena will allow us to generalize these kind of observations thanks to its sensitivity to fainter and more extended halos that are also due to smaller grains and fainter sources. Sometimes, in some cases, the X-ray scattering by dust also enables to do distance determination. When you have a flux variation from the X-ray source, basically the hard X-rays are unscattered, while the soft X-rays are efficiently scattered. You can measure the delay between hard and soft X-rays. This delay is depending on the distance to the source and the dust distribution along the line of sight. So you can, in principle, like some people have done it, you can characterize the dust distribution and the distance to the source if you have the ability to use your telescope in a variable way, meaning to repeat the observations on the time scale of the variability of the source, which will be, of course, the case for Athena. Okay, so this is everything that I wanted to say for pure PCMI perspectives. You have other axes of research that will be enabled by, that will be facilitated by Athena. And the second one is this PCMI PNPS axis about star formation and evolution. So I start, of course, with star formation. Class 0 young stellar objects are not expected really to be strong or X-ray emitters at all, whereas the class 1 to 3 are strong X-ray emitters. And this X-ray that are emitted by the central protostar is going to ionize and hit the disk, causing changes of chemistry, changing of the way of the magnetic field coupled with the gas, and also causes photoevaporation. And eventually, all these ionization and heating process is going to affect planet formation and migration within the inner protostellar disks. Okay, so the origin of the X-ray emission in YSO is either fast jets or accretion shocks. So one disclaimer here, what is called accretion shocks in these In this context, these are the very, very fast shocks, 300 to 500 kilometers per second, that occur when reconnecting loop hits from the accreting gas hits the forming protostar. The temperature rises to millions of kelvins on bright spots. And you don't need to have a huge accretion rate to observe a significant X-ray luminosity in this case. And the last process, the last mechanical process, sorry, the last physical process that causes X-ray emission is coronal emission, which is thermal and due to the high temperatures and magnetic field in the outer atmospheres of the protostar. So basically what Athena will allow us to do is to discriminate, for instance, coronal scenarios, vs accretion scenarios, because the density required or underlying the accretion process are not the same at all as the coronal mechanisms. So far, this kind of study has been done in a dozen YSOs. So Athena will allow to enlarge, increase the sample, and to allow Doppler shift measurements through spectroscopy with XIFU in these objects. And this will tell us about the accretion process and also the coronal emission in these around these objects. Okay, so basically, XIFU will extend the sample to CTTs up to 500 parsec from Earth. They will obtain high-resolution spectra that will tell more about these accretion events, their variability, and their velocity. Okay, so that's the input of Athena on our understanding of star formation. Okay, there is also a possibility to probe directly circumstellar disks with the FA 6.4 keV fluorescent line. Which originates in circumstellar disks and not the photosphere. So one of the problems with this fluorescent line is that it sits next to the 6.7 thermal line, keV thermal line. So as you can see, it's very difficult for current instrument to disentangle the emission from both processes. So here's an example in a YSO in Orion Nebula with Chandra, here in the class 1 Elias 29 in ROHF with XMM Newton. And here is a simulation made with Athena XIFU in much less time than what was done before on this kind of objects. Okay, so basically with this time resolved spectroscopy, you have to favor very low integration times, otherwise you smear out, you spread the emission over a few very large velocity because the stars are rotating, of course. So with these kind of observations, you will be able to characterize the disk structures if you do observations during a flare, or you can also characterize the source and the presence of non-thermal electrons in star disk loops if you observe this kind of signatures during the quiescent phase of stellar evolution. Okay, talking about extreme flares, there will be also another kind of characterization with the 6.7 keV line. So basically, these flares are associated with magnetic reconnection events, which rearrange the magnetic topology, convert magnetic energy into kinetic and thermal energy and accelerated particle, so that you witness rapid changes in the X-ray emitting plasma composition, temperature, and velocity. So the temperature changes can be detected by current instruments, but the density and the velocity, for the density to characterize the abundances and the velocities, you need a spectrometer like XIFU to characterize these flares around CTT's stars. Okay, there is also a class of of progresses that will be brought up by Athena about the ultra-cool dwarfs. So I don't want to say too much about this, but basically the observations of ultra-cool dwarfs, which are either stars or brown dwarfs, and at young ages they are all brown dwarfs, will allow to put constraints on the dynamo, on the generation of magnetic fields in these objects. I don't want to say too much about this, but I still leave this slide because it's really borderline a PCMI perspective, I think. And finally, you also have constraints on planetary nebulae. So same thing, I'm not going to say too much about this. Planetary nebulae are shells of enriched stellar material lost during the AGB phase of intermediate mass stars. And basically, again, the exceptional spectroscopic capacities of XIFU will allow to characterize the fully, spatially and spectrally the winds that are generated by these events, and the interaction of the X-ray of the central star with its surrounding. And finally, there is a class of another class of events that are of interest for PNPS, which are stellar winds that Athena will allow to probe. So thanks to its high spectral and spatial resolution, XIFU will allow to probe small-scale structures on X-ray line profiles and also large-scale structures. These ones, so the small-scale and the large-scale structures have not the same origin, the same mechanism of origin at all. So the small-scale structures will allow to probe the mass loss rates and the wind inhomogeneities and the shapes of the structures, whereas the large-scale structure will allow us to test theories on the generation of magnetic field by the massive stars. In some cases, so it has been shown that 50% of galactic O-type stars are binaries. So you have, in this case, collision of stellar winds. So you can also do with Athena physics of wind-wind interactions, and finally of extreme stellar winds for O-type and B-type stars. And of course, you can take all these studies to the Magellanic Clouds, thanks to the good spatial resolution of Athena. Okay, another perspective that is borderline of interest for PCMI is the one that is shared with PNHE and PNCG perspectives, which is the studies of supernova explosions and supernova remnants. So you all know that there are two types of supernova explosion, 1 and 2. The ones are thermonuclear. It's the explosion of a white dwarf binary. The 2s are massive stars that explode, basically. And understanding both explosion mechanisms is still a challenge. So I put here a few leads on how to use Athena to probe the explosion mechanism of supernova 1A. So you can probe the nature of the companion that is poorly constrained, actually, which I didn't know. And you can also probe the mechanism, thanks to the high spectral resolution of XIFU. You can probe the mechanism of explosion, whether it's a deflagration or a detonation. Basically, the detonation is a supersonic deflagration, so you need a high spectral velocity to be able to characterize here. I hear some noise. Nathalie, is that you?
No, but I was about.
So I still have, how much time do I still have?
5 minutes maximum.
5 minutes. Okay. So Athena will also bring inputs on the core collapse supernova. There are two questions that remain to be explored. The mass cut, so the mass distribution between the residual impact object and the ejected envelope, and how the collapse energy results in the explosion. Is it neutrino or MHD driven? For instance, the neutrino plasma coupling effects, for instance, offer nucleosynthesis paths to rare elements that are only detectable with XIFU. Okay, so overall, the X-ray input will be important because XIFU will give us the opportunity to map a huge portion of the SNRs interacting with the interstellar medium or not, and will provide also strong and significant quantitative information on the velocity distribution within the observed regions. Okay, then there was one word in the supporting papers about the characterization of shock heating and particle acceleration and the characterization of CPA sources. So I want to talk about supernova remnants. This is supernova remnant seen from a very high energy perspective. So supernova, when the supernova explosion transits towards a supernova remnant, you have different phases, pre-expansion and Taylor, which happen at very high shock velocities, and then snowflow and fadeaway phases, where the shocks are much slower and radiate their energy. During the first phases, you have cosmic ray acceleration, and you probe this cosmic ray acceleration with very high energy observations in the gamma ray and in the X-ray regime, because the cosmic rays are going to interact with the interstellar medium, causing synchrotron emission. Electrons, cosmic rays interact with the magnetic field, Bremsstrahlung, Compton inverse effect, and pion decay between the protonic cosmic rays and the interstellar medium protons. Okay, so basically, in various supernova remnants, in various types of remnants, you have these signatures of these processes in the high energy domain. And Athena will provide indirect measurements, indirect indications towards this cosmic ray acceleration that takes place in the very young phase, in the very young phases of supernova remnant stages. Okay, I'm going to skip these slides and go on to a more PCMI perspective, which is the evolved supernova remnants, which are gigantic objects of 10 of parsecs diameter, where all kinds of energy, photons, shocks, and CRs are injected into the interstellar medium, and where star formation could occur in the places where these objects interact with the molecular cloud. So we are at the heart of PCMI perspectives. And in this case, you have to understand that the CRs, the cosmic rays that have to be taken into account in this diagram, are the ones that were accelerated in the past of the ASN-SNR event. And to characterize them, you need multi-lambda observations, including X-ray emission, cosmic rays that are currently accelerated in small H2 regions or pockets. And you need to track down with these regions with radio recombination lines, for instance, with synchrotron and free emission also. And cosmic ray can also be accelerated currently in protostellar jets and outflows. And so to constrain this source of cosmic rays, you need to study the star formation in these old objects. Okay, and all these cosmic rays, they interact with the interstellar medium. They interact with the dense medium through Bremsstrahlung and pion decay. So you need to measure the mass and density of the dense medium. They interact with the magnetic fields through the synchrotron emission of the electrons with the interstellar magnetic field. So you need to characterize the magnetic fields along and perpendicular to the line of sight. And finally, these cosmic rays interact with the photons through the inverse Compton emission. And in order to probe the contribution of this effect to this very high very high energy spectral energy distribution, you need to know the local radiation field from the IR to the UV range. Okay, so basically, you need to, if you want to understand the cosmic rays distribution and properties, you need to be able to interpret all the wavelengths that PCMI usually studies through the gas and dust emission processes. Okay, so I give you a case in point, the supernova remnant IC443, 10 years ago.
Excuse me.
Wait, 2 minutes. Is it okay?
Yes.
Okay. So 10 years ago, I was asked to study the shocks in this object, in this region, basically, and to quantify the energetic and chemical impact of pure shocks on the environment. But through the years, I realized that you don't have only shocks here, you have also energetic photons, UV and X-ray, and you have cosmic rays. So I reformulated in 3 questions that we are investigated. Can we quantify the energetic and chemical impacts of the SNR shocks, photons, and cosmic ray on the environment? Can we characterize the local star formation? And can we reinvest this knowledge to interpret the high energy SED and constrain the CR distributions? We started to do this. We measured the masses and we characterized the local dense medium with CO lines. We characterized the star formation with infrared observations by WISE and TOMAS. So we highlighted a few candidate protostars in this region, where the very high energy cosmic rays can be seen by Veritas and Fermi. And also we studied the dust properties from a few microns to a few millimeters. These studies allowed us to make predictions also on the UV properties in this region. So doing all this, we constrained all the interstellar medium properties that are needed to interpret the spectral energy distributions in these objects. And also, we zoomed on the shocks, the so-called pure shocks, and we realized that there are not pure shocks at all in these regions. So this is the small field here. In these regions, you have molecular emission, seen in SiO, but you have also neutral and ionized emission seen in Si and Si+, which is overlaid with the presence of very ionized gas seen here at 330 megahertz. So this is a synchrotron emission. And in order to understand the energetic injection by SNRs in this region, you need to take into account these kind of photons also. And you also need to characterize the X-ray photons that can have an impact on the gas. So these are XMM Newton images. The shock region is here, and you can see that X-ray photons are all over the place on the edge of the molecular emission. So you must take them into account to study the interstellar medium properties in this region. Okay, so what I wanted to say basically is that in order to have a complete, comprehensive perspective on evolved super environments, you need to observe them at every possible wavelength. And this is going to be true, I think, for all regular star-forming regions, because CPA, Athena, and SCAR are going to tell us that they are cosmic rays emitters or X-ray emitters. And eventually, in order to understand these exchange processes between the stars and the interstellar medium, you need to forget about borders between XDRs, VS PDRs, VS shocks, and also between national programs to start to really do multi-wavelength astronomy. So I don't know if I will be there to discuss this during the table ronde. So I already thank you for your attention, and I hope we can continue discussing on these topics in the future.
Do we have a question in the room? Jérôme, maybe?
Yes, so you just mentioned in your conclusion XDR versus PDR. I'm slightly surprised that this is not coming before in your talk. It's because it's not discussed at all in the papers?
No, it's not in the supporting papers, but I suspect that these supporting papers have not been written by interstellar medium people. But personally, I think that the question is a bit obsolete, and I think that you have to get used to the idea that Athena, for instance, is going to measure X-ray emission with a very high sensitivity. So Athena is going to tell you that all the star-forming regions that are a bit distant from the Earth, they are X-ray emitters, they are cosmic ray emitters. Actually, Fermi already tells you that W43, for instance, is a strong cosmic ray emitter. So at the end of the day, we have to prepare ourselves to the idea that anywhere we look at, we have a mixture of X-rays, UV, and shocks that impinge on the interstellar medium, I think.
And we have one question from Didier Barret. So thank you for the very comprehensive overview. Would you agree with me that further simulations are required to verify the feasibility of some of the science objectives you presented, like time resolved spectroscopy, and we could provide support as need to be for that.
Okay, so I don't have the answer to this question because I'm not a specialist. I fully trusted, I naively fully trusted the supporting papers, and in everything that I presented, I can only answer with certainty on the two questions on the end of the talk about evolved supernova remnants and also star forming regions. About more specific aspects of stellar evolution, for instance, I am not a specialist, and I don't even know if there are specialists in the audience or even in France.
Okay, thank you, Antoine.